Nearly all of the open Scottish mountain landscape has been shaped heavily by human-associated activity over millennia, to the extent that very little of the original vegetation cover remains. I'm heading somewhere in this video that has put that process into reverse with an ambitious landscape restoration project, and the early signs are encouraging. I'm also spending a surprisingly cold night for this time of year in this beautiful spot, and taking a dip in the clear waters of the local loch. My name's Feargus, and this is the middle of nowhere. This is quite a good path. It's unusual for me to be walking on quite a nice path. Normally I'm trudging across bogs and getting my feet stuck in holes in the ground and falling over tussock grass and all of that sort of stuff. But this is a place that I've been meaning to visit for quite some time because it's a fascinating and, in Britain, a relatively unique experiment in restoring ecosystems. So although I'm walking through a birch forest here, most of these trees are really quite young. They have been able to sprout because the area on this massif is carefully managed. So in most of Scotland they put up fences because you get very, very high numbers of herbivores, deer basically, which are at such high densities that they munch any saplings that try to get going to death. So forests don't manage to regrow, although in historical times they did exist in lots and lots of parts of the Highlands, and in prehistoric times in far bigger areas. But here they're taking a somewhat different approach. Rather than rely on fences, they're managing the deer numbers through culling to mimic and recreate the kind of densities which would exist of large herbivores in the Highlands if there were still large apex predators such as wolves. It's probably the closest analogy, without actually bringing back the predators, that you can get to mimicking the way that a forest would regenerate itself if they were here. And there were, there's one. There's an old birch, which is a bit gnarly. And a couple of decades ago, there were those lone ancient trees dotted about, which were dropping their seeds, but they were unable to grow beyond a few centimeters in height because they just got munched. But now they are surrounded by their babies, which are rapidly growing towards the sky. So I am really loving seeing this in action. There's another old tree from where things are spreading. It'd be wonderful to see this place in 50 years. Smell that. Bog myrtle. It's a native. It's all over my hand. Every so often I get a waft of the stuff because the sun is heating it up and it's just giving off this aroma. It smells a bit like a eucalyptus or tea tree, kind of Australian. And it's just a lovely element of having a really nice sunny day out in the Highlands like this. Awesome. Wow, this is a beauty. That is a very impressive corrie. Look at that water, it's very clear. I am at the Corrie Loch on the eastern side of Creag Meagaidh mountain, and it's a little over 600 meters above sea level, and a fairly long walk, but it's on a good trail. I've never been here before. I've never even hiked in this area before, so I am winging it and figuring things out as I go along. I'm gonna have to find a good spot to camp. This place is just seemingly a bit too busy. Over there's a big crowd of people. I can't tell where they're from based on the language they're speaking. But first, while the sun is shining and the weather is really warm, I am gonna jump into the loch, because that is something which I really like to do. So bear with me while I get ready. Okay, some of you who have been watching me for a while will know about my fondness for snorkeling in fresh water in all of its guises, especially in the Highlands. And you might have seen my recent article on ukhillwalking.com about just that and how I go about it. It's a basic snorkel that I'm doing today. It's pretty cold, and unfortunately in my last video where I was on Grunard Island and I went snorkeling in the sea, I put out my hood and my gloves to dry, and I left them on the bush, and then drove home for an hour before realizing that they were there. And so they're somebody else's now, so I will probably not be able to last all that long, but let's see what's in here anyhow. Whew. Well, that was cold, but actually the water's not that cold. It's warmer than the sea in Scotland. It's just because I'm missing my hood and my gloves and all of that stuff. But this was just a bit of a rush job and a scouting trip really for this loch. It's quite different under the surface than a lot of the lochs that I'm used to doing up in the northwest around where I live. Geologically, things are very different here. I'm also not seeing bugs like diving beetles and stuff, which I tend to see in a lot of the other lochs. But then there are a lot of fish, trout as far as I can tell, and they are probably eating whatever might try to get going in these lochs. And I presume trout just haven't managed to colonize some of the ones that I often go to because they're too isolated, whereas here, whoa, you're a big crow. Check that out. So although that was a relatively unprofessional looking snorkel without all of my paraphernalia, I do have plans to do a whole series of videos on the topic running through the autumn, starting in August when the holidays, the summer holidays have started wrapping up. And in fact, I've already started filming them. Last week I filmed one where I did a proper project. I've actually had some bad luck with losing and breaking stuff in general over the last couple of weeks when the weather has been so glorious and I have been out doing so much. I lost those bits of neoprene. I broke my camera. I flooded my camera. So on that snorkeling trip that I did last week, I was taking still photographs with my big bulky camera using a basic housing, which is basically a tough plastic bag, which has done a fairly good job for the most part. Although it did spring a leak a couple of years ago and I fixed that, and then it sprung another leak as soon as I used it last week. So I won't be trying that again, and now my camera is in the shop to see if it can be repaired. So fingers crossed. And then I crashed my drone. So if you have noticed that in the last couple of videos I haven't had any drone footage, that's the reason. When I was doing the one about the canyon, when I was talking about mindful photography, I tried to get a shot at the top of the huge waterfall, which I featured at the end of that video. And just as I was setting it up, one of the propellers got caught on a branch which was overhanging the river, which then goes into the waterfall. It fell out of the sky, and from what I can tell, it must have then fallen into the river and then gone straight over the waterfall and got smashed into pieces. So I wasn't able to find any of the bits, and I feel quite bad about that it went into that beautiful place. But that's what happened. So no drone, I have to replace that. I have to fix my camera, and fingers crossed no other disasters will happen soon. So right now seems to have actually cleared up. This is quite a popular area with people going up the mountain along this route. So I'm just holding on to the last bits of sun at this far end of the loch, and when it's gone I'm going to make my way closer to the cliffs, because I think it looks like there's a flat area where I could set up my tent, which is a bit off the trail, so a little bit more private once the sun is gone. Good morning, folks. I didn't film anything yesterday evening after I set up the tent because I was knackered. I just got inside and the tent was surrounded by biting midges, and there was no conceivable good reason to get out again and do anything. And then I just slowly dozed and eventually drifted off to sleep. It was really cold last night, and I was not prepared for that. There was frost on the ground this morning. There was me lying in my sleeping bag last night and waking up a few times to put on another layer until I had nothing left to put on, thinking my usual that I'm just being a wuss here in my winter sleeping bag and I'm getting overly sensitive to the cold. But no, when I woke up in order to get out of the tent and take pictures at sunrise, there was frost on the ground. I know I said
My camera is broken, but I've borrowed my wife's camera to make sure that I can at least get some landscape pictures while I'm here. But it was so beautiful this morning. There was a mist dancing around on top of the loch, which you get when the air above the loch is colder than the water itself. And it was just stunning, as well as the light, of course, and the frost on the vegetation. And I think I got some really nice pictures. Well, I have now had my breakfast and I am just jumping in, as usual in my videos, to say thank you to all of you for watching my videos. If this is the first video of mine that you've watched, have a think about having a look at one of the earlier videos that I've done. There are more than 60 of them up there now, the majority of which are of hikes in the Scottish Highlands, many of which include snorkelling in fresh water, mainly in lochs. So I actually have playlists of both of those, Scottish Highland hikes and loch snorkelling, and I'm going to put the links to each of those in the description below. So if you just click on the link, then you'll be able to just play through all of them in one go, if you have a lot of time to spare. I love making these videos and I love seeing that people are watching them and getting lovely comments from people every time I put one up. If you're not yet a subscriber and you like what I'm doing here, hit the subscribe button below the video. And if you know anybody who might be interested in this type of material, then there's a share button as well, where you can share a link to the video or to the channel in general below the video. Now, I'm hoping to be able to make these videos for a long time to come. It's the centerpiece to a business plan which I have in order to actually make a living from spending time in the mountains, in the wilderness, both in Scotland and overseas. And of course, to make that happen, I need to be making some kind of an income from it. And one of the various ways which I'm trying to do is by using Patreon. So Patreon is a platform where you can donate money on a regular basis each month to people who create material which you like. And there's only one small plan there, which is just about this price of a cup of coffee once a month. And if you can afford that, then a donation would be much appreciated. And the link to my Patreon page is also in the description below. So, thanks for listening.
Look at how lush it is. With all of these bilberry plants, crowberry, can't see any bog standard heather actually, and these little trees. These trees are, according to my app on my phone, which is called Seek, are bird cherry, which is a species I have never heard of. But look at this magical little spot. It's like a little fairy fort where I've got the rock overhanging above me, even making a little echo, and then around it on the outside here, almost completely surrounded, are the trees with their beautiful bark covered in moss. That's a sign that this place is normally very damp and actually is classified as a rainforest habitat, however small. And there's clover dotting the ground all over the rocks and the moss, as well as the ferns. It's so pretty. Ah, wow. And looking all over the ground here. I'm being very careful about where I tread to try not to stand on anything unusual. But there's a really big concentration around here of plants which I may have seen and kind of look familiar,
at some point in the past in the Highlands, but here there's loads of them. Herbaceous plants, herbs basically. Lots of different species of them. Some of them are absolutely beautiful, and I will put up the names of them once I've figured it out myself from the app that I have. There's little saplings there, like that mountain willow, which represents a fragment, or at least a single specimen, of an almost extinct habitat in Scotland, which was once widespread, which grows at high altitudes. And oh, look at this. Look at this. What a beautiful plant. Stunning little herbs, stunning plants. Lots of saplings coming up. There's a rowan. There was another one back there. Awesome. If I haven't made it abundantly clear enough already, I think this place is awesome. Apart from over there, which is the real hotspot where I was before, looking at all of the variety of plant life, just looking around the loch and in this corrie in general is quite different from most places that I go to. So there is a bit of heather now as I get further away from that more damp area. But unlike in most areas like this, which I visit in Scotland on a regular basis, here the slopes are not just covered in heather or grass. There's a huge amount of bilberry plants. So those are going to have lovely little wild blueberries all over this hillside in 6 to 8 weeks time. And you could gorge yourself on that. And then you get a sore tummy like I used to do when I did it as a kid on the hills where I grew up. I knew before coming up here that the glen on the way up was the big kind of thing where the forest is expanding and it's really being promoted. I didn't really think about the landscape this high up and even higher, which I have read is also under the same kind of management protection. On a different note, one thing that I've learned from the last couple of years doing this channel is that views and subscriptions tend to go down in the summer because hopefully most people are out in their own way enjoying the weather and enjoying the long days, and I really hope that you guys are doing that if you can. So because things slow down, I am going to be extending the gaps between videos until August, September from about 10 or 11 days to 2 weeks. So the videos will come by every fortnight on a Sunday for the next 2 or 3 months. And that will give me a bit of a respite to do other things that I'm working on, including working on my book, which I'm writing, and spending more time with my family, because the school holidays are a time when I'd like to be doing things akin to this, maybe not quite as extreme, with my wife and my 8-year-old son. And we also plan to go away and visit family because neither of us are originally from the UK. But as I said before, if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, share the channel with someone, donate if you can, and I am going to see you guys again in a couple of weeks. Thanks a million for watching and enjoy the summer.